One of the first things that I learned was when you need to put a customer on hold or do something, you ask their permission. And it was this phrase, are you able to hold while I look into that? You give them choice. The thoughtfulness behind that language and behind actually asking for that choice and
Yeah.
permission and consent can waterfall into every other thing, every other step that you take with that customer.
Customer experience wisdom, a dash of travel talk. We've been cleared for takeoff.
The best meals are served outside and require a passport.
Hey everyone, welcome to CX Passport. You actually don't know how excited I am to be recording this episode because today's guest is Sarah Hatter, the creative force behind ElevateCX. And why am I excited? Because of that, because of ElevateCX and all that Sarah's going to share with us. The fact that it's taken us, 4 attempts now, Sarah, to try to make this happen. And we are finally recording this episode, and it's going to be a great one.
Yeah, this better be the best episode you've ever done. Sorry to interrupt, but I'm just saying, considering the length you've gone.
You can tell. Yeah, exactly. Listeners and viewers, you can tell the difference in how we're going to introduce this, the way we're going to do things, because we are so excited to actually having the opportunity to hit record. I will share with you just a little bit about Sarah, though, like I always do, listeners and viewers. I know that for a decade, she has shaped these spaces where customer experience professionals can truly thrive, offering this blend of live events and online courses. Speaking of ElevateCX, Sarah has created this community that spans 3 countries, connecting CX leaders through masterclasses and live AMAs, and helping them stay ahead in this rapidly evolving field. Her work at Co-Support has been equally impactful, helping both emerging and these established companies enhance their customer support strategies, emphasizing efficient, education-first approaches. Today, we will finally, and I say that with deep sincerity and excitement, get into Sarah's insights on the state of customer experience today, the power of community, and how thoughtful, attentive leadership can drive a company forward. Sarah, I am delighted to say welcome to CX Passport.
My gosh, what an intro. I hope I can live up to all of that, but I'm just telling you, this feels like I have made it. I am at the top of my game being on your podcast. This is like, this is really, really fun for me. So I'm glad that we're finally making it happen.
What I love about that is there's listeners and viewers out there like, my gosh, is Rick really that exclusive? No, it just was an incredibly difficult path for you and me to get going here. So, I have, and a lot of guests talked about their origin stories. I love hearing those origin stories, and I know the listeners and viewers like hearing them as well. So let's start there. What is your origin story on how you got into customer experience, and what do those early days teach you that you apply today?
It's funny. I think I've gotten used to telling the story so much that I feel like everybody's heard it, but it's still surprising to people. I am a tried and true customer support veteran. My very first job when I was 15 years old was actually working in a call center. Do you remember? I mean, you're old enough to remember when you'd watch TV and there'd be that blue screen. They're selling stuff to you, and it's like P.O. Box ... or call 1-800.
Oh yeah,
remember those?
Shipping
and they always seemed
$13.
Yeah, and it was always like in the same couple of cities. Way back in the day in America, those places were, logistical centers that had call centers attached. And that was my first job, answering the phone for people who were buying ShamWows and like Kaido Slim online. Excuse me, not online, on the TV or radio. We would even have different...
There was no online.
There was no online. This was like way back in the 90s, right? We would even have little buttons that told us, the way that on the buttons, if it was a red button, it was from TV. If it was a blue button, it was from the radio. They were calling from the radio. So, So, I mean, that's a weird thing to say, considering where my career trajectory took me. But I think it served me very well, right? So I did that for a long time. And then when I was 19, 20, living in Northern California, I got, looped in with a bunch of my friends doing cool shit on the new internet, and would do little things like write their documentation for them or help them with customer support emails because, I had that background. And then before you know it, I'm working for a startup, one of the very first SaaS cloud subscription companies. And in 2011, I left to start Co-Support, which was my customer experience consultancy. And at that time, I mean, we can look back on that time and just be like, my gosh, what a rocket ship we've been on. But back in 2010,
Right.
2011, there were not people talking about CX like we do so freely and so effortlessly, excuse me. And we also don't have to explain people anymore. Like, we don't have to explain to them anymore what this stuff means, right? Or the processes involved, where I certainly had to, which is why I had the entire consultancy. So yeah, that's what that is. I've been doing that for about 12 years now. And then in 2012, we also started ElevateCX, which is our live in-person conference that we do 2 to 3 times a year. So we've been doing that as well for 12 years. My gosh. It's really, time
does
flying.
fly here a little bit, doesn't it?
It really does.
Hey, I want to. The fact that you started at that type of role, I think, is so valuable.
Yeah.
There's
Yes,
so
me
many
too.
folks who are in the CX space that have not had that actual customer facing role. For me, it wasn't phones. I worked in a grocery store. I worked on the front line of retail at a clothing store. If you remember the brand Structure.
Oh, yes.
In the malls way back at the
Men's
same time,
Express.
you were probably getting the 800 phone calls. That's right. It was meant, and it had a little cut through between Express and Structure.
I recall.
And so if you haven't had that frontline experience, you don't necessarily appreciate, and it may not be fair. People can learn their way into it. But thinking back to that, you said 15, 16-year-old self, what are some key lessons from then that you're saying, all right now, this is what I take forward in customer experience today?
I'm telling you, there are things that I still say and do that I learned in my training when I was 15 years old for my very first job. That is not a joke. and things that I have, especially when it comes down to writing macros or scripts or knowledge, documentation, stuff that is still in my brain. One of the key things that I have always stuck to, and I always train people on when we coach and train, CX teams that are on the phones. Phone training and like phone skills has really gone downhill since 1996. Let me just tell you. One of the first things that I learned was when you need to put a customer on hold or do something, you ask their permission. And it was this phrase, are you able to hold while I look into that? You give them choice. And that is a very concrete example. That's one singular thing. But the thoughtfulness behind that language and behind actually asking for that choice and permission and consent can waterfall into every other thing, every other step that you take with that customer, right? So you are not going into the situation demanding or just reading off a script. I mean, we've all had to have those phone calls with Comcast or with, God forbid, the IRS or whomever it is, right? Where you're just like, I just feel like I'm just so worthless to you and I'm bothering you and I'm interrupting your day, and you are in the position there to help me. You are the person on the end of the phone number that they gave me to call for help. So shouldn't the interaction be teamwork, and shouldn't it be, shouldn't there be at least a perception that you're on my side and that you want to help and you're willing to help and you're going to do that thoughtfully and efficiently. So that's one of the big key ones is in any kind of written language, and especially on phones, I'm very, very, very serious about like how we present ourselves as being that champion team member to the person who's calling, which is like a small thing, but again, it's a waterfall effect.
This is your captain speaking. I want to thank you for listening to CX Passport today. We've now reached our cruising altitude, so I'll turn that seatbelt sign off. While you're getting comfortable, hit that follow or subscribe button on your favorite podcast app so you'll never miss an episode. Love it if you'd tell a friend about CX Passport, leave a review so others can discover the show as well. Now, sit back and enjoy the rest of the episode.
And what's great about that is you've given that customer agency in that point, and they feel like that they're, if not the words in control, like there's some power shift that's between agent and customer, but you've let them feel like they're a part of the solution, that this is not no longer a combative situation, but actually they have a role to play in moving it forward. And that brings that teaming together that you're describing. Yes. Okay, you said something in there that triggered a question that I want to ask you, and that is, you talked about, training is not quite what it was before, right? And we've seen the evolution of this customer experience industry. It is simply not a pretty picture out there right now. there are teams that have been decimated. There is a perception around customer experience. You've even talked about this concept of price gouging of salaries in the
Yeah.
CX space and what that means. Tell me a little bit more about what you're seeing out there, especially that price gouging phrase.
Yeah. I could talk about this for years. I'm just warning you. You're gonna have to cut me off. Just like get the hook and like drag me off stage.
Okay, it's a 30-minute-ish
Okay.
episode, so
Yeah.
we'll,
I think that one of the bigger things that we're facing right now is we're facing this hurdle. And let's talk specifically about consumer products. Let's talk about larger products, the ones that we have more experience with as a consumer ourselves. Enterprise products, D2C, e-commerce, whatever it may be. 10, 15 years ago, maybe 20% of those large legacy brands, names that we know, were using BPO services. They were offshoring and they were using giant call centers or email farms back in the day. But now we're seeing that more in like the 50 to 60% range of people who are actually using offshore outsourced services. There is nothing inherently wrong with that unless you fail to train those people properly. And that's the gap that we're missing. There are some BPOs out there. Boulder is one of my favorites. I think they do this so well. They are on the ground in these communities, actually like training agents, training representatives, doing language schools with them, making sure that they're paid a living wage. There's a big incentive for them to be treated like great employees that we want to invest in and not just sort of like, I don't know, but the negative connotation you can kind of put together on your own. But still other companies, I just don't think are training well enough, or they're training in a way that I feel is just really sloppy and not authentic. And you and I know this, we've gone through this before. Like you call someone and they're like, oh, my friend, I'm so happy to help you. How is your day going? And you get, if you're in a chatbot with someone, you get back these paragraphs that are just well-meaning, but inauthentic, not real. And that's where some of that frustration comes from, is that I can see through all of this stuff, right? You're trying to layer on a lot of politeness and a lot of these like quippy language things, but you don't even have a context of what that means to me as a consumer, right? So we get back into that rut of I'm trying to explain something to you and I'm waving my ticket at the counter and there's someone else there who just is really focused on hitting a script, checking a box, getting it done, right?
There's a phrase that I've used with specifically what you're talking about, and I call it faux empathy.
Yeah.
And it is that, how was your day? I'm so sorry this happened to you. And those can be appropriate. But true empathy is understanding, am I in such a desire to get this fixed in an efficient way that I actually don't give insert word here, I don't give a lick about your emotions towards me. I just want what I want and what I called for. I call it kind of the New York hamburger stand versus the Deep South restaurant experience, right?
Yes.
I just want my hamburger. Just give it to me. And so some of that faux empathy, that scripting, and what I really appreciate in what you said though there is it wasn't this immediate vilification of BPO industry, because I wouldn't do that. I actually really love the BPO industry, but the equipping of those agents that are going to be performing on behalf of a brand that has chosen to outsource is such a vital part of it, that training part.
It really
Why
is.
do you think that they aren't being trained to that degree?
It really is. And when I talk to people who come to me and say, we want you to audit our systems, or we're working with a BPO and their quality is really low, that's on you. That's on you. You are hiring this company to provide you with employees who are front line for your customers and consumers. You are the one who should be directing how they're treating those consumers and customers, right? And yeah, I love that idea of like this, it's like faux empathy. And again, it's not malicious. It's not in some way like meant to, con us or whatever, but it is just a very sloppy way of trying to give people language that, we're all friends here. When in reality, like, I don't even want to be on the phone call with you. I don't even want to have to take this step. You've already failed me by having to have this interaction. I'm huge on that. We do audits for co-support quite a bit, and people come to us and we're like, very first question, what's your volume? What's your daily volume of incoming customer contact, right? And then the next question is, why is it so high? Because there's always a reason. It's one of two things.
Right.
One, you've made it so that people have to contact a human being to get a certain level of service or to resolve a certain type of issue. They are already coming into that interaction guns blazing because they've sort of like thrown the
Yeah.
keyboard out in the air and just like, why can't I deal with this? Secondly, like you are not aware of how much those little interactions really affect that consumer customer relationship and your reputation in their eyes, because most people in the demographics that we're seeing buying things online, especially like in the D2C market, they're of an age like you or I, or maybe the generation younger, that we just want to fix the problem ourselves, read the directions, show me how to do it, let me watch the YouTube video. That is who we are serving.
Yeah.
And if we don't serve them appropriately in the way that they are focused on learning and used to learning and want to learn, then all we're doing is creating opportunities for more frustration. And so every little detail of the interaction after that frustration has happened, and I have to escalate that, it just gets worse and worse and worse. Right. So it's, again, that kind of waterfall effect that I always think about.
That is the fact that you're talking about the customers already come in frustrated.
Yeah.
And listeners and viewers have heard me say this, right? I am not a proponent of call deflection for the sake of call deflection.
Me neither.
I like what you're describing, Sarah, and that is how can we create the self-serve solutions that are valuable and desired by the customer,
Yes.
valuable to and desired by the customer, while allowing for the human interaction when the customer needs that human interaction. And so I get that same spirit from you. I imagine a lot of that comes from that experience, right? You've been here through the customer experience world for a while now. Customer experience, as you mentioned, is this mature industry. It's got its mentors now and its mentees.
It is.
Whereas a decade before, we didn't even have that. I kind of imagine that that's something I could expect to see as part of ElevateCX. And so I want to talk about ElevateCX specifically.
Yes.
Thinking about an industry that is challenged right now.
Yeah.
It's got this maturity that lends itself to mentor-mentee. Talk to me about the power of community. Where is community in general, and where is ElevateCX in this conversation around making customer experience better?
Yeah, I love that you brought this up because I love telling the origin story of ElevateCX, which I didn't really do. In 2006 through 2011, I was working at a startup that was SaaS company startup. I was the sole person on my team, customer support. I was the only non-technical employee. So I was front and center with customers all day long. And one day I got an email from a customer about a feature. I replied to him that, we can't provide that, but blah, blah, blah. And he wrote me back and he said, this is a really good reply, especially because you're basically telling me no, but you said it in such a way that made me hopeful and made me not think that I was being blown off. And I really enjoyed it. And then he said, I live in Sydney, Australia, and I do your job for another company. And I've never met somebody else who does my job or who knows the ins and outs of this. Again, kids, we are very old people. This is a long time ago, right? And that person was Matt Patterson, who is now at Help Scout. He was at Campaign Monitor at the time. He was like employee number 3. I was like employee number 6 of my little thing. So for the next few years, we would email each other. And, I remember one time I was getting inundated for some reason with charitable and educational discount requests. And I didn't really have a good way to say, oh, we don't really do that. Or do we? I don't really know. I emailed him and asked him, do you have an answer for this? He sent me an answer. And it was an answer that I'm not joking, I still use to this day. When I coach people on the same thing, I'm like, I've got a great template for that. So kudos to Matt. But then I think it was 2009, we both had the opportunity to go to South by Southwest. We knew that we were going to be there. And we made a plan to meet in person. And we sat at this little tiny table at a coffee shop. And we just exchange notes and we just talked about stuff and this and this and this. And again, this is the only person either of us have ever met who contextually understood our day-to-day job and what it meant and how it was emerging and changing, and we didn't have guidance. And yes, you can look back and say there was the Disney Institute and Jeannie Bliss, but those again are people in the hospitality industry or working with call centers or these large legacy brands, not I have 20,000 customers for a cloud-based SaaS product. Completely different worlds, right? So when I started my consultancy, I went on a solid year of hitting every single tech conference, every single interview, every single thing. And I was exhausted. And I remember saying to a friend of mine, first of all these conferences suck. They're all the same. They're all doing the same stuff. It's greasy pizza boxes. It's a stupid t-shirt you're never going to wear. Sometimes it's a tote bag, it's like whatever. And then on the flip side of that, I had about a year of just thinking to myself, I cannot be the only person talking about this. It can't just still be me and Pato on the other side of the world, the only voices interested in this. So we decided to do this conference and really reached out to every cool brand that we could think of and our friends and people that we knew and just like, do you have an intro here? And we decided to put together this day of like customer support and success people. Let's talk about what we know and give each other tips. I did not expect, number one, that anyone would show up or buy tickets. Number two, I didn't expect we'd sell out almost immediately. I didn't expect that standing there in the room with 300 people at this event, people would be asking, when's the next one? Can I talk at the next one? Have you heard of this person's story? So it was a very organic and natural sort of evolution of going from, I know there's other voices out there and I want to showcase them, to suddenly I have a platform to showcase them and I want to continue to do that as much as possible. I used to tell people all the time, like it was kind of my mantra, that I wanted to put myself out of business as far as being the fixer to come in and like deal with your SaaS company, bad CX. And I did that in 12 years time. We've done over 46 events in 3 countries, every state that you can think of that has good catering at a hotel somewhere. And, we're doing 2 more events this year, one in London in November and another in Denver in September. So the more that we do these events, regardless of what's happening in the economy, what's happening on the CX side of things, there is a huge demand for it from our industry. And, we recognized last year when the layoffs started happening very indiscreetly that maybe we needed to offer some more online content. So we dove into that pretty heavily. So now we do live masterclasses every other Friday, plus our podcasts, plus a lot of evergreen online content. But we are still committed to doing in-person events, large or small. I think people need it and they want it and they desire it. And they want to find ways to make it happen, especially when you're out of work and you're looking for better networking opportunities. As well as I do, in the CX industry, the best roles out there are ones you find out through friends or the references that you get through friends or for people in your network. So we're really dedicated the past calendar year and obviously going on, we've been really dedicating ourselves to becoming a resource for people who are out of work or who are looking to find new work or new roles in the CX industry, and also broaden what that means. So we are not just a tech heavy conference or community. We're now seeing a lot more people in the e-commerce and retail world join. We're seeing a lot more people in private industry join. We have people who come from the White House communications office. That's so weird to say out loud, but they deal with customers too. Right. So so that's just kind of how it's evolved. We continue to see more and more and more and more as years go by that people's desire and need for community increases. It has never waned, and it is never going to, I think, be something that is not essential to someone's career path.
I love that all that you're describing in there goes back to that sense of community. Even when you're talking about the job aspect of it, along finding the next job, the learning aspect of it, just the encouragement of another human who might have been across the world from you doing the same thing and realizing the universality. And it's that across the world that inspires me to say, hey, you and I need to stop down here. Sometimes that travel can wear us out. And I'd like to invite you into the First Class Lounge to take a little break right now. We'll move kind of quickly here, but we'll have a little bit of fun too. What is a dream travel location from your past?
Oh, New Zealand for sure. I mean, I've been very, very lucky to like go everywhere in the world that I want to go. But New Zealand, I've been a couple of times. As you can tell, if you're watching the video of this, my background is a lot of nerdery related to Lord of the Rings. So I've, been to the Shire. My mom and I actually did a road trip where we drove from Auckland all the way to Wellington and did the entire North Island. It's a ridiculous place, but I highly recommend it if you get a chance to go or have 2 weeks left of Your life, you spent it in New Zealand. It's the place to be.
Well, that's kind of a dark ending there, but yes.
I know. I didn't mean it like that. I don't know how that came out. Yeah. It's the last thing you do.
If you have 2 weeks, if you have 2 weeks, regardless of the motivation behind it, Sarah, not only are the objects behind you, so is the feline off your right shoulder there. What is your cat's name and why?
My cat's name is Pippin. He's named after the Hobbit from Lord of the Rings. Pippin is my favorite Lord of the Rings character.
There you go.
We can go on and on about it, but obviously it's just
there you go.
For a ragdoll.
So as soon as you said New Zealand, I was like, oh, of course it's going to be New Zealand. Of
course.
Let's go the other direction.
Yeah.
What is a dream travel location you've not been to yet?
Egypt. That's on my list. Yeah. My family and I, we actually had a trip booked for this Christmas. We were going to do a Nile cruise and have decided, just in the realm of, political thinking, we're maybe not going to go this year, but it's one of those places where I feel like I'm a student of history always. I think that the best decisions and thoughts come from seeing what other people did and kind of tweaking it to be the best version for you. And that comes across in a lot of the work that I do and a lot of the mentorship I do is asking about what is the historical context of this thing. And so obviously I'm really drawn to places like that, or Greece for the same reason. That's one place I've never been.
Look, you just adding.
Yeah, I could just I could go on and on.
Well, Egypt is a place that I've spent, I think it was 3 days. It was a work trip. So I've been there. I loved it. It was brilliant. I'd love to go back and do what you're describing as well. Greece is a place I've not been to yet either. It's on my actual dream list. And part of that is because of the food. So let's ask you this now. What is a favorite thing of yours to eat?
Gosh, you are really getting to the core of me right now, aren't you?
These are the deep questions, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I have weirdly disordered eating, and that like there are things that I especially at home, I'm just really consistent. I like to do the same thing every time. It's one less decision that I have to make every day. But when I travel, anything goes. There'll be anything in the world. So I would say definitely I'm a big cheeseburger aficionado. That's like top line for me. Yes. But I also really love experimental foods. I love cheeses from around the world. I love countries where cheese is your dessert. I just find that
yes,
we need to do more of that in America, right? We really do. We need to have better cheeses and think of them as an indulgence, not just something on the side. So yeah, I'm big on that. My favorite bread is a croissant. If you want to dive really deep,
I'm with you here. And what I'm laughing about is viewers know that I clip up these shows and drop a clip there on YouTube for the YouTube Shorts. And I'm really tempted to have America should be better with its cheeses.
Yes, clip, listen.
We
I'm telling you, the more that you travel,
let's go the other way.
The more you travel, you have those experiences, the more you're like, gosh, what's wrong with us? Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot that's good about us too, but yes, it shows you that there is more than one way to eat dessert. Let's go the other way. What is one thing growing up you were forced to eat, but you hated as a kid?
Squash. I have bad memories about squash.
I'm with.
Yeah. And I wouldn't even say this is actually this is a better one, and it's not about when I was a kid. It was about when I was growing up and then in my 20s. New York style pizza is not good pizza. And this is a hill I will be happily dead on. Ooh. The sogginess, the pieces are too big, they're flopping around, the cheese is too greasy. Half the time there's no toppings at all. No. We've all pretended for too long that it's good, and I disagree. It is not good. It is not good.
Okay, so I know that there's at least a sizable percentage of the listeners and viewers right now that have just either slammed their keyboard or their phone down or whatever it is that they're using to watch this. I welcome all perspectives on CX Passport, even if I like kind of folding up the pizza and having a bite of it myself. But other than a shield, that I think you may need to carry a shield right now, what is one travel item, not including your phone or your passport, that you will not leave home without?
I really like these sugar-free vitamin C drink mixes that have like electrolytes in them, but they're
Mhm.
sugar-free, they're low carb. That's my tried and true way to just stay like without jet lag. I don't know how it works. I don't know why it works, but I highly recommend them to anyone who's traveling. They're just good to have. When you're traveling, you're on your feet way more than you realize. Like people are walking around a lot. You're eating
Yeah,
indulgent food. You're eating a lot of
absolutely.
sugar way off your diet. So it's a nice way to kind of center, I think, your body and your brain too. That's like my big thing. I would also just say is like another caveat: loop earplugs. If you've never gotten into loop earplugs, it's a lifestyle, and it'll absolutely change everything for the better for you. So that's my plug. If you're listening, loop earplugs, I'm available for influencer deals.
My gosh, Sarah. Okay, well, I'll reach out to them and maybe we'll see
Yeah,
about
please.
a deal. But
Or I just love to get someone from their team to speak at my event. That's another thing I'm always thinking about too. If you're a cool brand like that, and you want to speak
okay,
at
I
Elevate,
like
please
that.
get in touch.
You actually, Sarah, you did say that when you were mentioning how did you get started. You're like, oh, I just picked cool brands, and I
Yeah.
like that approach. It makes at least it's going to be kind of a fun conversation there on the floor. Speaking of fun conversations, I don't know if you're looking at the timer. I just looked at the timer and holy cow, we are out of time. But there's a specific thing that I want to ask you about, and it goes back to that front line. So let's close out with this.
Okay.
And it goes to this evolution of customer experience. So many companies talk about being customer first, and they have their platitudes and they have their signs on the wall. And yet they still go and ignore and underfund specifically the customer facing front line, whether that's the
Yeah.
retail store, whether it's the agent on the phone. I want to go the other way. What are some stories and examples out there of companies that you see doing it right today?
Gosh, we don't have time for this, Rick. You should have asked me this instead of the cheese story. I would say I'll give you one example of a recent one that I think everybody can learn from. It's a D2C brand. They're an influencer brand named Crew, Krewe, like the Mardi Gras float. They sell sunglasses, pretty
Okay.
high end sunglasses. They're not of a Luxottica brand, so they design and source and everything. And it's sunglasses, right? How hard can it be? Well, every time I've had to contact
Well,
them or anytime I've had a question, one time, they use that like forgotten cart or cart recovery programs. They send me a text and they're like, "Oh, this is still in your cart." And I was like, I love that they texted me because that's my preferred way of communication. And I clicked the link in the text and it brought me to my cart with my thing in it still. I wasn't even logged in and I bought the things. So fast forward a year, I broke this pair of sunglasses. It was completely on me and they were repairable. But given that they are not a Luxottica brand or a prescription eyewear, I emailed them and said, "What do I do? This is totally on me. I'm willing to pay for the repair. Or do I just replace it?" And instead of getting back an autoresponder telling me I'll get a response in 3 to 5 business days, and instead of getting back nothing or something that was, "Hello, my friend, I am so sorry to hear about your fill in the blank, what did you do to screw up your life
yeah.
situation. I am happy to help you," right? They actually sent me back an email that started with, "No worries, Sarah," and included the
Hmm.
information about their unlimited lifetime warranty, no questions asked. All I had to do was send a picture in. They
Hmm.
sent me a shipping label, and it was bump, 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 bump. And 2 weeks later, I got a new pair of sunglasses. Couldn't believe it. I was floored because that is the type of customer support or service that you have to think about well beforehand. You have to think about before people start asking
Yeah.
those questions. You have to put the policy in place. You have to empower your support teams. You have to give them all the information and then stand by it. And if that means that people, quote unquote, abuse the system, which again is not a good
Mhm.
enough excuse to not do these things, then you figure out ways to, work with those in particular customers instead of criminalizing your entire
Right.
consumer base. I was just really floored by it. It was something that happened within the last few months, and it's always top of mind for me. So I think, again, it comes down to how much we prepare in advance for situations like this, right?
I'm really glad you shared that story, and I want to end there because it hits on one. It's just good, yay, happy.
Yeah.
Let's end on a positive because there were some
Right.
elements of darkness even earlier in the episode. The ending there. The other part is it hits on a couple of things that I really, really love, and that is process and execution. What you just described, you said it. It had to be planned out ahead of time. There was a plan. There was a possible use case, if you want to use that phrase, and what is the process that's going to be handled inside of it. And instead of it being a policy, it's scripted to your point of the words. It had this process and execution, and it allowed for the humanity of the agent that was responding to you as well. There's this wonderful linkage between that process, the discipline, the system, and the humanity in the story that I'm hearing, that they can say things like no worries, or they can engage with you in the method that you want. And it's awesome.
And the agent didn't have to make the call. That's one of the best things. The agent was already empowered to make the call. There wasn't a, let me ask, or let me put you on to our manager and let me ask permissions.
Yeah.
Or, I don't know. There's a case study. We'll look into this. We've already resolved that, which means that we are already in alignment of how we treat our employees is how we want our customers to be treated. Right.
That we're ending right there. Exactly. I love that you're calling that
Pippin's
out. Sarah,
done too.
If folks wanted to get to know a little bit more about, wow. Okay, Pippin, I didn't mean for you to leave yet.
He's
we
done.
Still got to find out how can folks get in touch with Sarah. Sarah, if they want to get to know about you, more about ElevateCX, more about co-support, what's the best way for folks to get in touch?
Well, I've been on the internet for 100 years. I'm highly Googleable, but you can also go to ElevateCX.co. You can also find us on LinkedIn if you're into that. We just started a group so that people can notate their membership in ElevateCX as part of their LinkedIn resume. But join our Slack channel. Our Slack community is open to anybody who's working in the CX industry, whether you're in niche startup growth stage companies or SaaS or e-commerce or private industries. We'd love to have you.
Awesome. All of that we'll get into the show notes, how to get there. And you just click there and get connected. Sarah, what a fun, wide-ranging conversation. Appreciate that.
Oh.
I'm sad that Pippin didn't get to stay with us until the very, very end, but it was enjoyable to see Pippin and all of the New Zealand and the Lord of the Rings.
It was great to finally get this done.
Insight.
Yes, I'm so glad we were finally able to.
Sarah, thank you. Absolutely. Sarah, thank you for being on CX Passport.
Thank you so much, Rick. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for joining us this week on CX Passport. If you like today's episode, I have 3 quick next steps for you. Click subscribe on the CX Passport YouTube channel or your favorite podcast app. Next, leave a comment below the video or a review in your favorite podcast app so others can find and enjoy CX Passport too. Then head over to cxpassport.com for show notes and resources that can help you create tangible business results by delivering great customer experience. Until next time, I'm Rick Denton, and I believe the best meals are served outside and require a passport.